Thanks for coming and listening to my talk. This afternoon I'd like to talk about child-resistant solutions in dispensing and packaging systems. My name is Joe Keenan. I am Director of Development, and Business Development for North America for MWB. So I'd like to talk a little bit about MWB, my company, in particular our healthcare group, talk about child-resistant packaging and an upcoming and pending regulation in the United States, and lastly, how we can be your child-resistant solutions partner. Okay. A little bit about MWB. I don't know if many of you know who we are. We are a global packaging leader. We had $5.3 billion at sales last year, 30% of our revenue from emerging markets. We operate in over 100 nations worldwide, and as such, we employ over 17,500 people. We also have over 700,000 acres under sustainable management. And lastly, 83% of our revenues come from some sort of packaging solution. Right. We operate in many different markets, the food and beverage market, beauty and personal care, home and garden, healthcare, and also corrugated. And we're not just a manufacturer of packaging. Most people think of packaging as a box you put stuff in, right? Well, it's a little bit more than that. There's a talk yesterday about how it's a mechanism for delivery, safe delivery of product, as well as it's an integral part of brand building. And as such, we have deep customer relationships working on how packaging can be used for the appropriate delivery of the product, as well as building the brand. So we have differentiated end-to-end solutions, and we have focused end market participation. MWB is innovation. We start with the consumer, and we design packaging solutions in collaboration with our customers. Our Center of Packaging Innovation is in the U.S., in Richmond, Virginia. And we also have affiliates in Brazil, Europe, India, and China. Our core innovation competencies are packaging design and development, brand engagement, market consumer insights, research and development, and open innovation, where we take ideas from the outside world, because we believe that not all good ideas come from internal, and our job is to be able to find the right ideas, the best ideas out there, and bring them to market. And as such, we have over 4,000 patents on our products. So let's talk about our healthcare group. We have a broad range of healthcare solutions for the RX marketplace, OTC, the clinical trial support, and also filling of generic oral products. We have production facilities worldwide with our healthcare organization. In particular, our Medical Plastics Center of Excellence is in Hamer, Germany. And we partner with leading companies. As you see, there's many companies here that you may be familiar with, from small, mid-range to large pharma companies, as well as retailers like Walmart, which is one of the fastest growing retailer pharmacies in America. We have a broad portfolio of products from primary to secondary packaging. On our primary side, we have pharmaceutical pumps and sprays, okay, that range from topical to nasal to ophthalmic dispensary systems. And these products, we also have preservative-free solutions with our nasal and our ophthalmic, and also have child-resistant solutions for these bottles as well where it's appropriate. On our secondary packaging side, we have products that are adherence-enhancing solutions, which incorporate methodologies and design to help enhance the compliance of consumers with their drug. And I'd like to make a special mention that yesterday, my colleague Tom Grinnan, he presented our Shell Pack Renew secondary packaging product, which was awarded the Best Sustainable Packaging design for the CPHI show. So round of applause. Woohoo! A lot of work went into that, but I think as you may have seen a theme throughout a lot of these talks, sustainability is becoming more and more of a concern and a desire in the marketplace. We also make devices as well that include electronics to help aid in the adherence of medicine. As such, we procured a company called Ardex earlier this year, which plays into that. Child resistance. The products I mentioned, we also, primary and secondary, we incorporate child-resistant technology, and it's part of our DNA. Over the past 10 years, MWB Healthcare has led multidisciplinary teams to design, develop, and commercialize over 35 child-resistant packages, including 6 child-resistant designs, in non-healthcare markets. As shown here are some of our secondary packaging products that have a child-resistant design to them. And as such, we've had over 300 million packages out in the marketplace with no reported child-resistant failures. Shown here is a non-healthcare product. It's a consumer product that it's actually a popular product in the United States, a toilet bowl cleaner, actually, that includes a child-resistant solution that we designed and brought to marketplace. So child-resistant packaging, while you're here. What is child-resistant packaging? Well, it's special packaging for a wide range of household products, including pharmaceuticals, to reduce the risk of child mortality from unintentional ingestion. It achieves this while it's not being difficult for normal adults to use properly. It's typically required and recommended for oral, RX, and OTC products, drugs, pesticides, household chemicals. Now this is important. What child-resistant packaging is not. It's not child-proof. It is not a first line of defense. It does not take the place of diligent practice of the consumer from keeping the drug away from the children. I think that's first and foremost important to know. It's also not ubiquitously required by law. In the U.S., there's a regulation for certain drugs and household chemicals, etc. But not all countries have it as a regulation. Many, it's just a standard that they request you follow as a guideline. But despite all that, the United States Consumer Product Safety Commission has quoted that effective child-resistant packages have prevented thousands of poisonings since the Poison Prevention Act was passed in 1970. The use of child-resistant packages on prescription medicines alone may have saved the lives of over 350 children since 1974. So even though it's not 100% foolproof, it's something worth doing. So a little bit about the Poison Prevention Packaging Act. It was passed in 1970, and it authorizes the Consumer Product Safety Commission, the CPSC, to require standards for the special packaging of household substances such as drugs that present a hazard or serious personal injury to children. It requires special packaging for a wide range of household products, including pharmaceuticals. Now, the CPSC is basically the regulatory body here, and they basically enforce the regulation, which is 16 CFR Section 1700-20. And where is it required? If we talk about the United States in the healthcare marketplace, it's basically anything that requires a doctor's prescription unless it's been specifically exempted from CR requirements. Certain OTC products, including those that contain specific amounts of aspirin, acetaminophen, ibuprofen, iron, fluoride, and several other listed substances. Any solid oral dose products, such as pills, tablets, capsules, approved by the OTC sale by FDA after January 29, 2002, that contains an active ingredient that had previously been available by prescription. These are basically called OTC switched products. And lastly, investigational substances being used in clinical trials. if they are dispensed on an outpatient basis and contain an amount of product that could be expected to cause serious injury to children. Let's talk about in Europe. The EU has child-resistant testing standards that are similar to the US, but certification is generally not required by law. Each individual EU member state has the right to determine the product requirements in that country. So the two most common standards followed are ISO 8317, which is the international standard, and EN 14375, which is the European standard. Now the EN standard is very similar, and so is ISO, to the US regulation, but there's two fundamental differences between the EN standard and the US regulation. One is that the EN standard does not include the statement that the children can use their teeth. Okay, so it's considered not as rigorous. And if you know children that are like mine that have very sharp teeth, that gives them quite an advantage when they're in the testing, believe me. Second is the EN standard does not test to hazard, meaning there is no F rating. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment, what that means. So child-resistant test protocol. In the US, it does test to a hazard, okay? And this can be a bit complicating to describe what an F rating means, so let me try to give it as an example. So for instance, in the US regulation, if we have a product, say it's an oral dose product that you wish to have tested that comes in basically a container, say of 30 oral doses, and it has a CR cap on it, okay? So first and foremost, you have to determine what or how many of those doses is a toxic level for a 25-pound child, okay? So say it takes 3 of those pills to be considered a toxic dose. Then, before the testing begins, that is considered an F equals 3 rating for that drug, okay? So when the child is able to, if they're able to break in through the cap, and if they're able to get access to at least 3 of those tablets, then that is considered a failure of the testing. So if the toxic level is 7 pills, then they have to be able to get access to 7 doses for it to be considered a failure, okay? Now, the regulation carries that all the way up until 8 doses. So if the toxic dose is actually, say, 27 pills, basically the way the regulation is set is that the child only needs to be able to get access to 8 of those pills to be considered a failure, regardless of anything beyond 8. So that's the way the US regulation is. The EN regulation is a bit different. It doesn't test to a standard. It basically states that if the child's able to get at least 8 doses, regardless of the toxicity level, et cetera, or an F rating, then that's considered a failure. So it's interesting. And you can also kind of read into what's the loophole there, you know, to make packages with less than 7 pills or 8 pills in the States. I don't have the answer, a good answer for that, but that's the way it's stated. But as we know, most products are sold in multiple formats, so we just carry on that way. But it's important to understand that difference. Globally, we see the issue of CR packaging gaining attention in many countries. For instance, in India, the Minister of Health announced a national program to control chronic diseases in India. The program will focus, among many things, on the prevention of exposure to risk factors such as child poisoning. In Japan, the Ministry of Health and Labor and Welfare has announced its recommendation to urge the use of CR packaging for medication. This is the first time the MHLW has such a recommendation, which may be the precursor to formal policy. And in China, the CPPA has issued a report arguing for CR requirements. The government has indicated that it plans to institute this requirement next year, actually. So, at MWV, we take child-resistant design and testing seriously. And if you don't, and you take child-resistant design and testing as an afterthought, this is what it's going to be like for you, because it's not trivial. A lot of time and money goes into coming in with solutions that work not only to safeguard against children, but also make it easy of opening. And the testing can be very rigorous. So let's talk about the test protocol. For the sequential child test, it's broken up into 2 time tests, okay? And they're 5 minutes each. The participants are children. The first test is 50 children, ranging from the ages of 42 to 51 months, gender equivalent in each group within 10%, okay? The package is opened and resecured once prior to testing to make sure it works, okay? And the children are tested in pairs, because usually children work in pairs. I don't know if you know, like my kids, you know, comrade at arms, mischief usually comes in more than one child. Children are shown how to open the package prior to the second 5 minutes. So the first 5 minutes, they're given the package and say, go ahead and open it. The second 5-minute test, they are shown how it works and requested to try to open it again, okay? You can test up to 200 children if you find the first 50 children test was a bit inconclusive. The pass-fail criteria is basically, on the first part, you must confound at least 85% of the children taking the test, okay? The second, where they're shown how to open the product, you must confound at least 80% of the children. So child resistance is only half of the battle here. You also have to make it so that's senior friendly. For instance, if you make it so hard to open and seniors can't take the pills, then, you know, what's the point, right? So in this test, and this is also a sequential test for seniors, it's 2 parts, a 1 5-minute part and a 1-minute part. The participants are seniors ages range from 50 to 70 years old, 70% women, and the test incorporates 100 participants. First opening, as I mentioned, is 5 minutes. The second opening is 1 minute. So they've gained some knowledge as they're carried on to the first test, okay? In the second opening, if the senior is able to open it within 30 seconds, that's considered a good design. And in this case, for pass-fail criteria, the seniors, 90%, at least 90% of the seniors must be able to access the product. So there's a proposed regulation that's pending in the United States, okay, that's going to require a child-resistant solution for existing products that contain a class of drug called imidazolines, OTC and RX products in the marketplace. And the dosage is basically any product out there that has at least 0.08 milligrams of imidazolines. And it's a popular drug. It comes in the forms of tetrahydrozoline, nafazoline, oxymetazoline, xylometazoline. You may know these products, for instance, Afrin or Visine. Basically, it's a vasoconstrictor that's used in nasal decongestant products, also ophthalmic eye irritant, okay? It's particularly interesting. It's been around for a long time, but since it's a vasoconstrictor, and if it's orally ingested, it can cause some serious central nervous issues and heart failure. So there's been over 5,000 reported cases of serious adverse events from children ingesting this product. And I don't know if you're like me, where you have these products usually on your shelf, especially Visine. It's out there. To a toddler, that looks like a bottle of juice. So it's about time that the CPSC in the United States has taken a step in the right direction to put safeguards on such a popular product, because right now there's over 60 million units per year sold in the United States that contain this product. And we talk about 0.08 milligrams of imidazoline, and you look at a bottle of, say, Visine, which is 15 milliliters, the child only needs to ingest 0.16 milliliters of the product. It's not a whole lot before it starts to have adverse events. Okay, so we expect that the ruling on this will come out between any day now, between any day now till the end of this year. And it is expected that the compliance date will be 1 year, that's typically the case, 1 year from the ruling, okay? But realizing the fact that this is going to be somewhat of a retrofit to existing product, and you need to industrialize, new molds, et cetera, a new solution, get it into the supply chain, et cetera, that most likely the CPSC is going to recognize the challenges that the manufacturers have and give a 1-year extension thereafter. So really we see enforcement of this new regulation going to be 2 years from this fall. So I'd like to talk a little bit about how MWV can be your child-resistant solutions partner. So what is the ideal child-resistant solution? Well, it should balance an effective child-resistant solution with senior-friendly ease of opening. It should encourage the engagement of the CR feature when product is not in use. For instance, if the person, yourself, uses the product and puts it down on the counter next to your sink, then, and the cap is not engaged, then it's really not doing what the hope was by the CPSC. So there should be some type of mechanism, indication, to try to intuitively get the user to be able to engage the lock so that it's protected and safe. It should improve the customer experience rather than degrading it, especially for products that are out in the marketplace. You shouldn't make it harder for them to use, per se. And so you need to address ergonomics, human factors, issues, et cetera. And maybe look at this as an opportunity to add additional features to the product to enhance the experience, make the grip, the feel in the hand better, et cetera. Have minimal impact on cost of goods. No one likes to spend more for a product they're already making money on in the marketplace. That's understood. It provides an opportunity to rebrand the product. I mean, we've all seen, I guess, laundry detergent coming out every year saying new and improved. There's always a reason they try to come out and make the existing product look better, or somewhat to try to spur a chance of gaining more market share. So this is an opportunity. If you have to make a change, why don't you go in there and try to make it so that you're not just complying with regulation, but you're also trying to enhance the product to gain more sales. So as I mentioned before, child-resistant design is in our DNA at MWV. We have a global design team. We have IP positions in child-resistant solutions for both primary and secondary packaging. We have in-house competency in patient preference testing and consumer insight. We just don't design and build it. We go out there. We work directly with consumers to understand what the unmet needs are and what is needed to have a successful product. We have leading expertise in dispensary systems and the integration of embedded child-resistant solutions. And we're a partner capable of providing a competent and reliable supply chain. We're making this stuff already. So that's my talk now, and thank you for your attention, and I'll take any questions you may have. One thing I'll point out, it's worth noting, is that we don't do the testing, okay? Testing is typically done by independent laboratories, all right? And we have some folks from IVM in Germany, which is a child testing laboratory, which thank you for coming. In the States, there's a couple other companies also involved in this. And so, again, at the end of the day, one thing worth mentioning is the process that's used when you go to the testing laboratory. What you're given is basically a test result from this laboratory. Okay, the liability is not with the laboratory. They're an independent laboratory, does the testing and gives you the results. What you need to do in the US with the regulation is at some point someone who's in charge with the regulatory needs to sign a certificate of compliance stating that we've done our testing and we have a product that's compliance with the regulation, okay? And The CPSC basically does auditing and looks for that compliance to make sure that you've taken diligent practices to abide by the regulation.
Since you mentioned that you work very closely with the end customer, when you work on a child-resistant solution, who files the patent generally? It's the end customer who files the patent for the child-resistant solution, or is it MWB?
I'm sorry.
The patent for the child-resistant solution. If you work with the end customer, who files the patent usually?
Okay, very good question. So who files the patent application for the child-resistant solution? Basically, it's who invents it. So, for instance, if it's a pharma company that internally developed their own patent solution, design, and they request, say, MWV to manufacture this in accordance with a dispensary system, then they patent it, they're responsible for that execution of that patent. At MWV, we are constantly working up and designing child-resistant solutions for primary and secondary packaging. As such, we file our own patents for our designs, and we're responsible for the prosecution of that patent.
Thank you.
Do you want to talk?
Any other questions? If so, I'll take it that you're all experts on child-resistant packaging, and so go forth and conquer. Thank you for your attention.